All right. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to YouTube Live, Monday, September 23rd. Coming on here just a little bit late, about 10 after 12 Pacific Standard Time. If you guys are tuning in live, let me know where you guys are coming in from. Let me know where in the world you guys are viewing from. I would love to hear you in the chat section. As I've said many times, I'm going to be doing these lives every Monday and Friday, 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Just talking on a whole variety of topics, a whole bunch of, different things as it relates to relationships, to polarity, to spirituality, to awakenings, initiations. We're literally going to be talking about so many different topics. And I eventually want to have this to be able to be more of a discussion as opposed to just my fucking ugly face here, just giving you guys a Shakespeare fucking monologue. So, if you guys are tuning in live, would love to hear where you guys are tuning in from, where you guys are watching from in the chat section. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do if you feel so called to, so you can get updates of when these videos are happening. Okay, so I was going to talk about the art of taking up space in today's video, but I came up with that title for this video about a week ago, and then just over the course of just what happened in my space the last week, and just what I woke up kind of feeling called to talk about, because it's my channel after all, so I can talk about what I want. And so rather than talking about the art of taking up space, I'm going to talk about the art of alchemizing, the art of alchemy, the art of alchemizing. How do we get to a place in our life where we really, really begin to alchemize? And I want to talk about this just because I've had some massive breakthroughs within myself, within my own physical, emotional, energetic body that's transpired over the last week. Basically, all this crazy solar flare energy, all this energy that's been in the space for probably the last month, I've really, it's like my body's clicked into something, right? My body's clicked into something, basically transpired over the weekend, but had been building for kind of the last month, right? And so we're going to talk about the art of alchemizing. And what does it mean to be like a master alchemizer? Like, how do we alchemize things really, really quickly? And so I think the way that I want to enter this to talk about how do we alchemize things, the entry point into this is basically, okay, so what does it mean to alchemize? What it basically means is that things happen in your life, in your space, and you're able to really efficiently and quickly use that sort of whatever personal fodder or personal grist of something that happened to you, and or difficult emotions or difficult energy, and you're able to alchemize in your body and space to literally up level your consciousness, to up level just your own sort of personal evolution, right? So just things happen, you're able to move them through the body, to integrate, to expand your consciousness, to expand your embodiment, to move deeper into your embodiment, to move deeper into your own integrity, to move deeper into your own authenticity. And so alchemizing is so important on the spiritual path because people really get tripped up, right? Shit happens to us. Things happen to us personally, or we have to, deal with difficult emotions and energy, and we're not able to move through them, right? We're not able to move through them. And a lot of times when we have a really, really blocked energetic body, where our chakras, where our energy centers are really blocked in certain areas, that leads to energy not being able to move through. We're not able to alchemize, because when we alchemize, really, really what's happening is that we're moving something through the entire body, right? So for me, when I'm alchemizing, I am literally moving energy and emotions from the top of my head to the tips of my toes. I'm bringing and washing the energy and emotion that happens in my life, whether that's taking on collective energy, or whether it's to do with energy in my own personal life, or whether it's to be, things happen in my personal life, or if it's just my own sort of work of trauma and ancestral healing that just comes up in my space, that I move it and wash it through my entire vessel from head to toe. And basically, I'm at a point in my specific sort of embodiment where what I feel has been transpiring in the last month with all this crazy energy that's been going on is my transmission is now completely from the top of my head to the tips of my toes. Like I've been having these crazy releases where I feel my whole body and channel is literally syncing up as kind of one constellation. And this has probably been about a 4-year journey for me to kind of get to this point where my entire body, vessel, and system is at this place. And so what this means, right? So now my whole body from head to toes kind of coming up into this like one embodied constellation. Now, what happens is I have the capacity to alchemize things really, really quickly. I have the capacity to alchemize really, really quickly because your knowing in your body is not like a part of you, but it becomes the entire part of you, right? So when you really kind of move into that head to toe sort of capacity to alchemize really quickly, you're all knowing your sort of godly intuition, your oracle within you. It's not just a part of you, it's the entire piece of you. This is why, like I talk about, you don't need a spiritual practice. You are the practice because you've done enough clearing work energetically, emotionally, trauma in your body, that your body's a fluid channel, that it just filters and it moves things through and it washes them through to constantly upgrade in your ascension, to constantly upgrade your consciousness, to constantly upgrade and reorient to God at a deeper, deeper level. And it can happen really quickly, right? Even when you get lost in difficult debris, difficult emotions, you're able to find your way back to the God cord or God thread really, really quickly. And so when we have a real difficult time alchemizing, think about it. Things happen to people, we get stuck. Maybe anger comes up and we can't get out of the anger. We're stuck in anger. We're stuck in a hurt that we can't move through, right? And the reason being this happens, you guys, is because the ego to some degree gets involved and it blocks and it impedes the transmission, right? So when we talk about like divine embodiment, what it basically means is that your ego is able to get out of the way of the transmission, meaning your ego is able to get out of the way of the alchemy, of the alchemizing that is trying to take place. But for example, say someone has anger comes up, something comes up and they feel hurt, they're in anger. Obviously being in that emotion is so important to, I'm experiencing this emotion, I'm experiencing this feeling, to work through it. But when we really, really get stuck, for example, in anger, a lot of times with people, it's because they can't actually move to the hurt that's underneath, right? So anger, usually when we really move through a lot of anger, we experience a lot of grief and pain. And when we really, really can't integrate that experience, it's because we're not able to contact the hurt underneath, which would then alchemize the experience so that we're now able to very powerfully move forward from a situation, right? But people are always stuck. People always get stuck. And this is also why I talk, you guys, a lot about why we need a big rupture, or we need to experience ruptures. What that's doing is it's kind of like say there's like there's a child lock on a window. Like maybe the window won't go down or it won't go down all the way. It's like there's a child lock. And the same thing when we've never really experienced a big rupture relationally. So our system is trying to contain things within the fear-driven attachment wiring that we haven't been able to heal, integrate, or had an experience where that really gets poked, prodded, and it ruptures, right? Usually what happens is when people experience that or come close to experiencing that, they shy away from that experience of like, oh, like what happens when I really, really go through the rupture, right? So those ruptures, which is like, a divorce, a really big breakup with someone who you thought you were going to be with. It's, breaking up with your parents and a way that you were used to relating to your parents. It's a rupture with the ancestors of origin and your entire lineage. And people don't often endure these ruptures. And so, but when you really experience this rupture and go through it, now your channel is working in a different capacity, right? There's a level of flexibility, right? So I think when we talk about the art of alchemizing, because if you hopped in late here, guys, I'm not talking about the art of taking up space. I'm talking about the art of alchemizing because it felt more true for me today to talk about this. But this is why people get really stuck, because they have more of a fixed system, right? Think about our capacity to alchemize. Is the word we want to use is nervous system flexibility, right? Nervous system flexibility. And when people are very fixed, and what that means is there's so much of ego that is trying to contain and identify themselves to some perceived and known reality. And this is where people really, really struggle to find God. And they particularly struggle to find God when they go through challenging experiences in their life. They get really stuck. They get really stuck, and they get stuck in emotions or traumas that they can't move through, that they can't alchemize, right? So flexible system and a stuck system or a fixed system. This is why a rupture of some sort is so important, because think about, we have a really fixed system and we go through this really big rupture, right? And it's like a volcano and just everything in the body disrupts. And we're like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what that is. You feel really disoriented. The way that you would perceive reality through a fixed system, which is, essentially we're holding on to fear. There's still a lot of ego that's withholding some perceived reality. It means there's really deep, big core traumas that we still are operating in massive coping mechanisms to maintain, so they don't reveal, because we're not yet ready to heal them. And so when we go through that rupture, it's like a volcano, and we're like, what's going on? Like, this is crazy. Like, everything is different than I thought it was, right? This is always why my work, a lot of time I talk about, like, the real, really big initiation for the divine is a big relational attachment rupture. These ruptures, what they're doing, you guys, is they're setting the stage for alchemy. They're allowing the body to alchemize, because what they're doing is they're blowing up everywhere the ego is holding, right? And so when this eruption happens, people have a choice, right? Am I really going to embrace this rupture and move into a level of God and divine embodiment in my life? Or if I experience some of that wide open space, am I going to run to the closest thing, the safest thing? Am I going to stay in my old ways and stay in stagnation? And so when that rupture happens, it's an invitation to this place where the transmission that can move through us comes from our head to our toe, right? So it's not like the oracle is some part of you, but it's mixed with all this fear, all this ego. It's not sandwiched with all this other stuff. The transmission that comes through you is able to surrender to God. And so what happens is, now when you experience that big rupture, your ego has been kind of blasted enough that it's able to get out of the way of the transmission, right? The ego's able to get out of the way of the transmission. So this is what happens with people all the time, right? Is there's a transmission of, like, God that's trying to take place in our body. We literally are divine beings, and we're made of stardust, and we're always trying to get back there, right? We're always trying to get back to the remembrance of the divine within us. But just what happens is we have too much blockages in the body, too much ego, too much fear, too much trauma, too much stuck energy, that the body can't remember its natural origin state, how it's meant to work and function. Our body's meant to work and function with the higher vibration, the moon and the constellations. That's our body's natural place. That's where our body wants to go, right? And so that rupture blows shit up, and it creates movement in places there wasn't movement, in places where we were so gridlocked that created stagnation in our life. Now those are all blown up, and we're having to, like, find something to gravitate to. And this is really where the God system is born, really where the God system is born. And so the alchemy that happens here is, things happen in our life, and everything and every moment is happening for us. When you have your system blown up with that level of a rupture and you're really able to alchemize, what happens is everything is in a state of creation. So even when something bad happens to you, you feel your emotions and you process it all the way through. And the way that you're really able to alchemize so fast is because of the level of openness that your system holds, the level of energy that you move. So it requires a certain level of purging in our system to literally be able to open up our system to the alchemy of the God transmission, right? There's a certain level of openness that our system has to have, right? When I say ego, we're going to equate this to stuck energy in the body. Ego, stuck energy in the body. Ego holding on to a reality that is related to some unhealed traumas. So that's what we're going to say for this when we talk about ego. And so now when the channel's open to a certain level, everything's happening and you process the emotion all the way through. And then you're able to move through that experience by allowing the energy and emotion to move all the way through the body and vessel that is literally aligned with cosmic frequency. You're able to move the energy and the motion all the way through your body to up-level your consciousness, to up-level your embodiment. And then all of a sudden, like, you jump timelines like that. Like, shit happens and you can move through it really quickly and potently, right? And so this is one thing I've learned about myself is that my body emotionally and energetically processes things all the way through. Meaning when I have an emotion, I feel it really physically, which is most human beings, which is most people. But I'm very acute and very sensitive in that experience. And so when I went through my initiation, which is still ongoing, just not in the acute stage anymore, when I was going through that, it was about opening my vessel for the full transmission that wanted to come through me. And so what's happened to me in the last month is that now my transmission really feels head to toe. It really feels head all the way to my toe. So that what this means is when things happen to me in my life, when emotions and energy comes up, whether it's collectively, personally, or just old stuff, now it processes through my entire vessel. It's not like a part of me, but it's, you know, for example, say fear comes up. It's like, it's a full embodied fear. It's a full visceral experience in my body. It's not just like one part of me. It's the entire part of me is in the transmission of that emotion. And that's something I've learned about myself in how I move energy. But in this space of what happens is now you're able to alchemize something. You're able to process something, right? And when your body really, really opens up, you can alchemize really, really quickly. Because think about like a river. There's not all this impeding. Like the water can rush through the river. The water is able to rush through the river everywhere. And so what happens is that you can use whatever is coming up to expand yourself really quickly, right? So, you know, you could be going through an emotion and then all of a sudden, like, you can be in a different paradigm and you're like, what the fuck is happening? And the crazy thing is you don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything. When your body opens up to a certain level, you don't have to do anything. You are the practice. You are the church. You are the meditation mat. Your body, your vessel, how it works. You're in a natural origin state, right? So what really happens when you move into a divine embodiment is that you've moved and purged and cleared enough in your channel for your body to remember this natural way of alchemizing, right? And so just what this means is that you're able to honor things in your life and experience things, emotions, energy, trauma. You feel it, but you move it through to expand the range, the capacity, and the foundation of your body and system. And you're constantly doing that. And you don't have to do anything. Your body does it normally and naturally. And this is why we need a certain level of ego deaths in order to move into this transmission. When people aren't, you know, this is why so much of like spiritual industry, right? They're all spiritual as a practice or spiritual as a discipline. It's basically like a compartmentalized spirituality. There's so much ego identification wrapped up in it. And their whole body is not in the transmission of God, which is why we need these practices, right? It becomes a way that the ego is identifying some, you know, feeling of spirituality through doing this. And basically their body is not in the natural rhythm of how it moves things through. And so we kind of have to force it and orchestrate it. But when your body really naturally is in this kind of God state, you don't have to do anything. You can sit there living your life. You know, it's kind of like you don't have to preach your spirituality. And this is even greater than spirituality. I wouldn't even say it's spirituality. I would say it's just literally your body's in its natural origin state, which is like a cosmic divine state that is fucking magical, right? And it's magical because it's this massive healing machine that is always trying to move into a state of creation. It's always trying to move into creation. That's what the body's always taking in things, and it's always moving to its natural state of healing, right? And so you don't have to do anything when your body's in this space. And this is why this really expands beyond spirituality, right? The capacity to really alchemize, it expands beyond spirituality. And this embodied form of spirituality, it expands beyond the spiritual industry, which is why it's really triggering to a lot of people that are really like into spirituality, and it really turns them off because it challenges their paradigm. It challenges how their ego is identifying things, right? Like, oh, like it's not spiritual to swear and be angry, right? It's like spirituality has got to be all like loving and in the heart always. And it's like, no, it fucking doesn't. Like, that's fucking light bypassing bullshit. That's not the case at all, right? Like, actually spirituality is moving into the natural aliveness. When I think, is someone tapped in, how alive do they feel? How alive does their vessel and their channel feel? That's why when you see people who are really like stoic and they're like talking about spiritual practice, like they're not fucking connected to God. They're connected to a spiritual practice that is trying to orchestrate a compartmentalized experience of God, but their body's not in the transmission of God, right? And so this expands beyond it. And so much of the spiritual industry has created this paradigm of how things need to be. Things need to be a certain way, right? That whatever, you have to have this totally pure, clean lifestyle, right? And actually, what happens in spirituality is we have to go through shit. The spiritual life is actually just how you use the bad shit, the challenging shit, the dark shit, the gritty shit, the amazing shit, how your body alchemizes it through the channel to become an expanded human being and upgrade your consciousness through integrating your experiences. It's making mistakes. It's being out of integrity and then getting back into integrity. It's learning. It's exploring new aspects of your shadow. It's having your blind spots be revealed. It's expanding your capacity to hold joy. A spiritual life is really committing to like total imperfection. You're allowing things to swirl, and you're allowing the energy of life force to swirl, and your channel becomes kind of the conductor. Your channel becomes the conductor, and if your channel becomes the paintbrush, right? Where you begin to paint on the canvas of your life. This is why I always say, like, spirituality is really, it's about making art with your body. And the art of alchemizing, which is what we're talking about here, is we're constantly making art, right? Our body's kind of like in a space of this, always trying to take in information and orchestrate it for what we need to do for our own ascension, right? And so all the alchemizing that happens in our body is happening inherently for our mission and what our soul is here to do in this lifetime, right? So when we move into kind of this natural God state, the vessel is going to be really clear. Think of like a rushing river. There's no like logs or places impeding the flow. The flow is able to move, right? And even if there are blockages that come, we can move through them really quickly. And so it's like the transmission is trying to be from all the way from our head to our toes, right? Where all the chakras are able to counterbalance, all the energy centers are able to work together, right? That's really what this transmission is about. And we can really alchemize when the transmission is fully embodied. And like I said, I'm just at a point now in my journey where like I literally was having the very direct conscious thought, like, oh, the transmission is becoming fully embodied for me. Like, when you're like having like a trauma release and it's your whole body, it's like, that's what I feel in my space, that there's this transmission that is like I'm one container. It's not like there's this part, like it feels like one fluid cosmic container. And now what happens for me is like, I can experience like crazy dark emotions, and then 24 hours later, I'm like on a new timeline. Like I'm in a new paradigm. And I haven't bypassed the experience. I've fully integrated in my body. And now it's expanded. And now my consciousness is expanding because of the alchemy that has taken place. And it's really wild to witness this. And I'm not doing anything. It's just happening naturally. It's just happening naturally. And it's because, and the big reason is that I'm able to move through the experience, taking in the whole range, right? What often happens with people is they go through experiences and they aren't curious to other people's points of view. Um, they're too afraid to be exposed, to have their shadow on display. Um, they have so much inherent levels of unworthiness. So the ego is protecting. The ego is protecting our stories, right? And so what happens is that when the transmission moves from head to toe and it becomes the full body, right? The capacity to alchemize becomes the full body from head to toe. We're able to take in the entire range, right? Which means our ego is able to get out of the way to a certain degree, right? And so we're able to, you know, be introspective. We're able to take accountability and ownership for aspects of ourselves. We're able to be really, really gentle and tender with ourselves. We're ultimately able to move into a space. Imagine you were looking down at a situation from like a godly point of view, or if you were looking down at everything that was taking place from a bird's eye view of like understanding what's happening. And when you really have the capacity to alchemize, your ego is able to get out of the way of what transpires in your space so you can allow the experience to create an evolution for you in a very profound way, right? You don't filter it through your stories, right? Because those stories have moved enough in your space so you can allow for a higher level experience to happen. So I hope that makes sense to people. You can allow for a higher level experience. You know, for example, sometimes people get hurt and they filter the experience through their own lens of trauma or betrayals they've experienced. And so the experience isn't able to move at a certain level, right? So now, and usually what that does is it creates further stuckness, right? Obviously, things are going to come up and we're going to perceive things through our stories. We're going to perceive things through our trauma lenses. But when we really, really deal with enough of the stuck energy in the body, when we work with enough of our wounding, when we work with enough of our trauma, when we work with enough of our little boy or little girl, when we look at enough of our shadow and embrace our shadow enough and look at how our ego intervenes, right? Then we're able to create a different experience where we can move back into an orientation of God really, really quickly. Even if we get sucked into our stories, even if we move into the ego, right, for a bit or a period of time, we're able to come back really quickly and reestablish what the God space is. And we can do that at quite a fast pace, which means that we don't get stuck, right? Which means that you always know that whatever is happening, you're going to create something from it, right? And you just know that these experiences are happening, and your body is a conductor. Your body is a creative creator and a conductor, and it's constantly going to create a new experience as the energy and the emotion moves through your body, right? And so your ego's gotten out of the way of that transmission so that something of a higher level can break through. Something of a higher level can break through. And this is what happens where you don't stay stuck and your body's freed up enough that you can be a creator, right? Which means that you can integrate experiences like a lot faster than most people because of the big rupture, because of the ruptures you've endured, that all the parking brakes have been taken off your system. So now your system is trying to move into a full transmission of its orientation to God. And now everything moves through your entire channel as one embodied being. The transmission is fully embodied, right? Which means that your entire body can move through the situation without the ego holding on. Your body just lets go and surrender, right? You're like, but what happens? So much of us, so many people, we're fighting, right? We're fighting something. And it comes from deep feelings of unworthiness, that we're not good enough, that there's something wrong with us. How will people feel? All these different experiences, right? So we're fighting the transmission that would take place if our ego got out of the way to a certain degree, right? We're fighting aspects of ourselves, and what happens is we really get stuck. Experiences happen, and our body can't fully move the emotions through. And so the reason why we can't move the emotions through is because there's still something really deeply unhealed from the past, right? So when things happen in our life, we can't alchemize them quickly because there's some holding in, and oftentimes we have to recreate an experience to heal it, right? So say we're going through like a really challenging period, something's come up, and we feel really stuck in the experience. It's because it's revealing something from the past, some unhealed energy, karma, or trauma that is being brought up but isn't able to move. It's kind of like there's a stuck log, right? And so we have to experience that situation where we're recreating something so we can try and heal that experience. But if we're not able to integrate and move forward, it's because it's brought up something that we haven't opened, that we haven't tended to, right? For example, when people stay really angry and they stay stagnant in their anger, what it often means is that there's something underneath that anger that they're afraid to contact, they're not ready to contact, or they haven't contacted yet. And so anger is a lot easier. It's less invasive. Anger it's a very externalized. It's like we get to say someone else is in the wrong. We get to be the victim. But then when we move to the pain, it becomes more internalized, where we're having to like look at ourselves and our level of perceived worthiness, right? And so much of our capacity to alchemize comes down to our feelings of worthiness. If we really feel unworthy, then when situations come up, we're going to get really stuck because the ego is being activated to a certain degree, and we are afraid to access a certain level of hurt. So if you want to be able to alchemize things in your life, you guys, there's no shortcut. The way that you alchemize is you have to be able to feel the heart of what's happening always, which means the way to alchemize is your body has to fully feel the emotion. You can't bypass, you have to fully feel whatever your body's trying to integrate or process. So when we want to alchemize, we have to feel everything. We have to go into the heart of it, right? The ego wants to skirt around it. The ego wants to stay in our stories, but we feel whatever we're going to feel without the ego, and we surrender to the experience of, I'm going to process this. I'm going to fully feel this. I'm going to feel the shame. I'm going to feel the fear. I'm going to feel the anger. I'm going to feel the grief. I'm going to feel it viscerally and fully in my body. I'm not going to bypass it. And so you go right to the heart of it. And what happens is, when you've done a lot of purging and you've had a really deep spiritual embodied initiation, again, the level of openness in your body and your capacity to be with really challenging emotions, it gets really big. It gets really big. And again, this is why the ruptures are so important, because you move out of, you're not trying to control things. I'm going to let go, and I'm going to trust in the orchestration of this higher process and this higher experience. I'm just going to allow it to transpire, right? And so you feel the emotions all the way through, and those emotions are able to integrate and create a new experience. So the emotions integrate. There's a new level of calm that you experience in your system. There's a new level of ease. There's a new level of nervous system regulation. It's like, for me, over the weekend, I went through like the craziest, dark, difficult emotions and energy. And then yesterday, Sunday, I woke up and I was like, holy shit, I am so calm in my system. It was like a new level. So I processed all these emotions on an energy on Saturday. I woke up on Sunday and I felt like I was on a different timeline. So I felt like I was completely on a different timeline. My body My energy body felt so light. It felt so light. Just the lenses in which I saw reality, it was like you hearing sounds differently. You know, the world looks differently because things have changed. And in my system, I was like, whoa, this is a level of like ease and a level of calm and a level of groundedness in my system. And I've done a lot of nervous system work. Like that's a level of grounding that I had never experienced. I was like, whoa, like this is like a new space. And it was all because of these crazy emotions that my body was working through the day before. And always when really difficult shit comes up, I know there's a greater unfolding and there's a godly transmission trying to take place. And I know my body knows what to do. So the biggest thing with alchemizing is that we have to trust our body. I know my body knows exactly what to do. It's proven to me time and time again. But in the beginning, we don't trust our body knows what to do, right? And that's when there's so much ego that's holding on. There's so much unhealed trauma, wounding, karma, so much attachment trauma that our body is still gripping onto. And so we don't trust the transmission of our body. And so when you trust the transmission of your body, you can be like, well, I'm just fucking gonna let go. And for example, if you start grieving, then you're like, I'm gonna go undone into my grief. I'm going to go undone into my grief because I know the more that I let go into this grief and unleash the fucking beast that's trying to come through, there's going to be something so much more potent on the other side. I've been shown this time and time again, so I can surrender to the full range of the emotion that's trying to move through me, right? When we're not used to grieving, think about it, some grief comes up, but we're holding on. We're holding on. We're like, we have some tears, but we don't come undone in it. Like, you know what I mean? And so much of alchemizing is unleashing and surrendering to the full range of any given emotion that comes up, right? And we're taught not to do that. We're taught, oh, don't be, your anger is unsavory. And here's the thing is utilize it in a healthy way in your process and experience so that it's not hurting other people. So you're not externalizing it. So your ego's not running rampant and externalizing it, but you're allowing the transmission of the experience to fully move through you, right? So if you start to grieve, come undone in your grief, like let go. Like it's like whenever I have a client that's moving into grief, I'm always working with them to unleash more into the process and experience. Because if grief comes and you go undone into it, you're going to experience some gang energy the next day. The more you let go into the grief, the more gang energy that you're going to feel, where you're going to be like, whoo. It's like a man, like when a man lets go into his grief and he howls in his grief, you know what's alchemizing? The capacity to bend his wife over and fuck the shit out of her in a way that she's never experienced. When a guy fully comes undone into his grief, he's going to feel so much more in his masculine on the other side. He's going to have more capacity for his masculine energy, right? Again, grief creates space. Grief creates more access to anger, which creates just more access to your cock, to your sacred life force energy, to that gang energy. And so fully come undone into your experience, right? And when our body opens to a certain level, what happens again is the way that we process emotions and energy, it becomes fully embodied, right? Means that we move through things and our body has to process them all the way through. Our body has to process it all the way through. And so what this really means, you guys, is that the ego gets out of the way to allow the body's natural rhythm and healing mechanisms to work and take care of us, to expand and evolve us into a higher space and a higher frequency and a higher dimension. And so we're moving through a full embodied process with something. And we know that if we allow this process to fully unveil, and we don't get in the way of it, we don't try to control it, which is what we're doing is we're trying to control it, right? We're filtering it through our stories, right? This is why like things can happen when we really have the capacity to alchemize. we can experience crazy shit, and we don't put it through our stories. We do maybe for a little bit, but we get out of it really, really quickly. When people live in their stories, that's where they're stuck. That's where they're miserable. That's where people are frozen in time, and things happen in life and they can't evolve from them. They can't grow. For me, being a spiritual teacher, I see my duty is to be someone to just live my life, have a lot of different experiences, and alchemize those experiences in my body to lead and guide people who maybe are experiencing similar things. So I see having a wealth of experience and creating an alchemy of that experience in my body as sort of my duty as like a spiritual teacher. And I know for me, alchemizing and my capacity to alchemize is to really be able to move things through things quickly. That's how that's like, some people read books. The way that I actually upgrade my knowledge is through having experiences and alchemizing the emotions and energy through my body to up level my being, to expand my being, to expand my own embodiment, my own capacity, and my own sort of wisdom that comes through the transmission that comes through me. And so that's my version. Like, I like to read sometimes, but that's my version. That's my education. That's my duty and my education as a teacher and with the work that I do, right? And so people get so stuck. And again, things happen in their life that are revealing lots of unhealed things from the past, right? We need to recreate and experience. Is that an orb that keeps flying over my head? I keep fucking seeing something. That might be an orb, which means the crown's really, really open. I don't know if you guys are noticing that. But when you have orbs, it means there's like a lot of crown energy, or it might just be the reflection of that light. I don't know. So we'll have to see if I notice that. But what happens is you move the energy and emotions all the way through your body, right? And your ego, you're like, I'm going to get out of the way. And you allow an entire embodied experience to happen, right? And you trust your body. You don't have to get in the way because you know your body's going to do with it exactly what it needs to do to expand you, to help you grow, to take you where you need to go. And there's this level of openness and range in your body that everything is happening for you in a space of creation, right? Even when challenging things come, your ego's not hooked into like a story and a way that things need to be. And so different sort of like, minor curveballs or situations can happen. And you're like, your ego's like, I didn't foresee that. Like maybe at first your ego's like, fuck, I wish that didn't happen. But very quickly, you're able to be in the transmission with your body. Your body's hooked into a process that expands beyond spirituality. And you're able to use that experience to create something really quickly. And so maybe you're in your story a little bit. Maybe your ego's like, I wish that didn't happen. But your ego all of a sudden moves into a space. I'm grateful for this experience because of the transmission that it's provided me. That happens to me all the time. I'm like, I didn't foresee that happening. Maybe you're in that for a day, a couple days, and you're like, some uncomfortable experiences. And it's like your body's trying to digest something, right? And so people have a real, there was that light again. It's like a fucking butterfly or something. People have a hard time digesting experiences, right? They can't digest them, right? And that's all about the openness in the body. That's all about how much purging and how much space the body has. So when it comes to our capacity to alchemize, it's all about our feelings of worthiness or unworthiness and how much space the body has. When we don't have any space in the body, we can't alchemize. So it's all about, that's a fucking orb. Look at that. Gang, gang, my fucking crown must be open. Let's go, baby. Got the orbs flying. It's all about space. When we don't have any space, guys, we're not going to be alchemizing. We're going to be like, an experience is going to come and we can't digest it because there's no space, right? That's why we want to be in a place where our body is able to energy can enter and it can exit. So that's how energy clears, right? Think about our bodies we're this vessel where energy enters and energy exits. When energy enters, we're digesting. We're digesting an experience, an energetic, emotional experience. That's how you expand consciousness, is the body's digestion of experiences. That's how you become wise, right? Your body digests and integrates experiences to be able to expand how we perceive and what we can hold cerebrally in our capacity and paradigm, right? And so in order to alchemize, the crown experience enters, and then the sacrum, the feet, and the hands is where energy exits. Now what happens is energy can come and energy can go, and it flows. And now our body becomes kind of this lighthouse transmission where energy comes and moves through so that we can keep evolving and expanding. And we can take experiences that maybe we didn't perceive, but we know that our body is going to digest the experiences and move them through. With people who have a lot of unhealed trauma, with people who don't have a lot of space, people who are really stuck in ego, really stuck in like an ingrained karmic pattern or story, they're not able to digest because their ego is holding on to something, right? So an experience comes, it brings up something internally. The body's not ready to let go of what it's holding internally. It's holding on to something internally, which creates a block, which doesn't allow energy to move and flow. So what I'm talking about is like a God embodiment, is when the vessel is open enough that you can be this constant embodied vessel for transmutation of energy and emotion. And that's a place where I really, really feel myself just of recently of really coming into like the full embodiment of that space. And in that, your body keeps digesting things. And that's how you move on from situations. People are like, you've already moved on. Like, it's like things can happen to me, and it's like I'll process it completely, and then I'll be able to, and then I'd like move forward, and I'm like integrated from that. I know exactly what happened, why it happened, what I have to do, why that experience was necessary, why it was needed, even if I didn't foresee it or didn't seek it out. And it's because my ego gets out of the way of the embodied transmission and digestion of the experience. My body synced into a process. And so I know when shit comes up, no matter how dark it is, my body is like a master at moving energy through. And I've seen the transmission play out time and time again. I've seen the imprint and prototype. I've seen the blueprint so many times that I don't get in the way. I'm just like, okay, surrender, 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 allow. And I know it creates little pops. Energy begins to pop at certain times. What happens is the unconscious clicks into the conscious. That's where we expand. That's where we grow, right? You know, when you're that experience where your body clued into something, it's like, oh, right? That's like moving into knowing. That's like psychic, godly intuition. You don't get in the way. You know it's going to pop when it's ready to pop, and you trust it. People get stuck when they get in the way of that process, right? We don't trust our bodies. We haven't seen the prototype enough. We haven't died enough ego deaths. We haven't worked with enough of our trauma and our karma. Because when I went through my initiation, I based this very acute experience of like, oh, like God was like, Jamie, you're just going to deal with everything at once. That was like my experience. Like, you know, a lot of people, you know, that I've talked to, you know, maybe have similar experience. And maybe they've been through it for 20 years or 15 years, but not as acute as mine. Whereas mine was like 4 or 5 years, 3 years, but so acute. And for my process was like, oh, you're just going to deal with it all at one time. And so I had an initiation, which was this very acute experience where I was just going to deal with everything in my body at the exact same time. Literally everything. My own trauma, ancestral trauma, past life. I was going to deal with everything. And it was going to be dumped into my body all at once. And it was so that I could create this transmission, this capacity to transmute in my body. And this capacity to transmute could just allow me to continue to evolve and move forward, to continue to hook into new things, which allows me to continue to grow and evolve as a teacher, to continue to expand, to move deeper into yourself. Because that's what capacity to alchemize does. You move deeper into your heart. You are able to hold more of your shadow. You're able to hold more of your darkness. You're able to hold more of your light. You go deeper into everything. And the transmission that lives in your body becomes more clean and more pure. You're constantly purifying, right? Constantly purifying. Think about when someone really has a capacity to alchemize, you guys, their energy is going to feel pretty pure. They're going to feel pretty fluid. They're going to feel pretty sort of clean energetically. And it's because their body is constantly moving energy through. So it's clearing energy. It's not stuck. They're going to feel really light, right? Well, they might be dark when they're moving through something, but when whatever they're moving through really, really integrates, they're able to be really, really light. And so with people who can really alchemize, it's all about purifying the vessel. We're trying to create a more pure experience of our authenticity, a more pure experience of our soul's essence, a more pure experience of our aliveness. This is what alchemy is always trying to do. It's gathering and digesting experiences to try to create the most honest iteration of our soul's experience here on earth. That's why all these experiences are happening. That's why all this shit is being brought up. That's why all this stuff is happening, because we're trying to create the most honest and pure experience of our souls being here on earth, right? So, and the all-knowing in our body is looking to become fully embodied. So it's not one part of us. It's not like, part of us is all-knowing. The whole body is all-knowing. And that's why our body alchemizes situations and can look at things from like a higher lens without being sucked into stories and the ego's identification of something has to be this way. We're able to digest the entirety of it from a pretty neutral lens. So what happens is when we're really able to alchemize, we can move into a state of neutrality pretty quickly, right? Neutrality is like, how can I hold this experience as God? How can I hold this experience from a God's foundation, right? What happens is, experiences happen. People filter them through their stories. They filter them through their own hurt and pain, and they stay stuck. They don't alchemize the experience because they can't ingest the experience from a higher level, right? Which means honoring our own personal experiences, being able to see the experiences of others, being able to see the lenses of other people, being able to hold that experience and hold a lot in our space, and to be able to come at it through a level of grace, a level of accountability, a level of love and grace that we can move back to. And so the alchemy in our body is all about how can I move through life gracefully? That's really what it's about. How can I ingest, digest experiences that happen in my life to grow and evolve, but continue to deepen the embodiment of the grace of my soul and how I utilize experiences in my life, right? How can I be more loving? How can I be more loving to myself? How can I activate and initiate more? How can I become more of a conductor? How can I become more of a creator? How can I just become bigger in my knowing of who I am and what I'm here to do? And so it's all about trying to create a really pure experience that feels graceful, that feels like the heart is with the cock, with the crown, that our whole body's ingested into an experience that feels really multidimensional. And we're holding a lot of different things at the same time. And that's where we become really potent, powerful creators and conductors. And we take in experiences in our life and we use them and utilize them. We're constantly refining and creating, moving through darkness to expand our capacity for light, and we don't shy away from experience. We surrender right to the heart of the experience. We go all the way. When it comes to your capacity to alchemize, it's going to be about going all the way. Fully. Shit comes up in your life, surrender. Fucking surrender. Go right to it. Don't fight. This is about not fighting. This is about not fighting and surrendering to the transmission of what's happening. Like, lead me, show me. God, use me and work through me to expand my being and use this situation and experience to expand my grace and make me a more potent creator. When you do that in your life, you jump timelines constantly. You continue to evolve into new paradigms, and your body is constantly in the creation of a miracle in your life. And all you see through what you allow to happen inside of your body is a miracle in action, and it continues to surprise you. And you continue to get out of the way. So the most important thing we can kind of hold with here is the capacity to alchemize is the capacity for the ego to get out of the way and for our body to surrender. It's not about fighting, it's about surrendering. It's about giving up the fight. Giving up the fight, letting go, and allowing your body to transmute. And when you do that, things evolve really, really quickly. Really, really quickly. And this might piss a lot of people off that are stuck, right? That are stagnant. They're like, wow, fuck. Because they can feel. They can feel in your space how you alchemize. They can feel in your space, this person's grown. This person's up level. And it keeps happening. It's constant. It's constant. And it's fucking beautiful miracle when you witness this in action and the energy pops. And it's like, oh, I understand. It's like, guys, the best way I can explain it to you is like what transmuted for me on the weekend. It was like I read a life-changing book, but I didn't fucking read. I just moved energy for 24 hours. But the knowledge that I feel is embodied, it's like equivalent of like reading like a 500-page book that was feeding you all this information. That's totally how it feels. And so it's wild when you're like, I didn't do anything. Like the fact that I didn't do anything is which allowed something to happen. So alchemizing, don't do anything. Well, you need to do something so your body can be in this natural rhythm. You have to do, it's all about the amount of healing that you have to do to be able to be in the space of alchemy. But the entry point to that, you guys, is go all the way. Whatever energy, emotions, and experience are coming, go all the way. Don't just stick your toe in the water. Stick your entire embodied being and go all the way into the emotional experience. And when you do that, and you're constantly moving to the heart of it, and you tell yourself, how can my ego get out of the way of this experience so I can surrender to a higher orchestration to happen? How can my ego get out of the way so I can surrender to a higher orchestration to take place and a higher orchestration to live through me? That's kind of the mantra. Go all the way into the emotion, the energy, and the experience, and allow the full transmission of the experience with trying to keep our ego at bay so that essence, source, and God can live through us. And the process of alchemizing is the process of embodied growth, of up-leveling your consciousness, of expanding your paradigm, of jumping timelines. All of that is included in how we alchemize. And it's basically how the body digests, utilizes, and transmutes energy by entering and exiting through us as a transmutation process so that we can expand and grow through the different energy, emotion experiences that we take in while walking through life. Okay, I'm going to leave that there. The art of alchemy or alchemizing, again, for those of you who tuning in late, I was going to talk about the art of taking up space, but woke up, felt more called to talk about alchemy, just based off some things that had transpired in my space over the last week and over the weekend. And so I'll talk about the art of taking up space another time. But thank you so much, everyone, for watching this video live, or if you're watching the recording of this, it's greatly appreciated. Give this video a like if you resonated with it. Share it with someone you feel it might connect to. Let me know in the comment section what you enjoyed, what you connected with. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. We're going to be rolling with these lives every Monday and Friday, 12 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, at least for the next while. And I'll let people know if at any point that's going to change, stop or shift, or the schedule might change. But that's it, everyone. Happy Monday. Hope everyone has a great week. And thanks so much for tuning in to this live on the art of alchemizing.